welcome back to the MMA Split podcast. I'm your host Matt, joined as always by host producer Josh. Hello.
I'm producing today.
It's been a hot minute.
Yeah.
We've had some errors.
Been lazy.
I forgot to take my laptop to upload the podcast that we did 2 weeks ago, and then you fucked your ribs up.
Yeah.
I had a COVID infested house. It's been awkward. It's been weird. We haven't been able to talk, or at least let you guys know what we've been talking about over some pretty busy times in the UFC, which is a shame. But we're back, we're here, plenty to discuss. UFC 294 has happened. It did not happen in the way that any of us anticipated. Did not happen in the way that any of us wanted. I am not happy.
I did say you jinxed it about a month
I jinxed
ago.
it. It is my fault.
I'm not blaming you for it. I'm just saying that I did call that aspect.
I asked the MMA
Yeah,
gods to curse me, and first they changed the
I
lineup.
see these things.
They gave us injuries. That led to last minute replacements, short notice fights. And I had a bad feeling. A goddamn bad feeling about these short notice fights. I knew it wasn't going to be a good idea. Excuse me. On the start, first of all, one of the fights, horrifically uncompetitive. One of the fights with a short notice replacement, even less competitive. Guy got destroyed by Liskarov. Let's not forget Wally Alves was a short notice replacement in that one, and a step up in weight. And all I've come away from Chimaev versus Usman thinking is that Usman is the better fighter and beats him if you make it 5 rounds, or give him full camp, even if it's at 3 rounds, at any goddamn weight. So, I'm bitter, but we're going to be talking about it. Like and subscribe, comment, give us your thoughts, tell us what you think. Hashtag, it was a draw. I'm going to try and get that going. But we have to start with the main event. God damn it, this sport breaks your heart sometimes. We love Volkanovski. And again, I forgot to take my laptop when I had to go to Spain, to Marbella to do some errands. But we actually recorded an episode talking about these fight replacements. And I said I didn't like this because I wanted to see this rematch with both of them on equal merit, as prepared as each other.
Well, we should start with that, because the one kind of mitigating thing we discussed on the Secret app, and you have to take our word for it, we are geniuses. But we were saying if he's been preparing for Islam this whole time and he knows something we don't know, and he thinks he's like shored up some important holes specific to Islam, then fuck it. If he's ready, then fuck it. But it turns out he was just rolling off the couch for it, had a hard time making the weight. The fuck? Why did he take this fight?
He was 181 pounds when he took this fight. So he had to make a 26 pound cut. That's not with him in full mode. No training camp. He'd had the hand injury. Obviously, I'm not saying the guy was eating potato chips on the couch, but he wasn't training. And we're going to talk about the Usman-Chimaev fight. But I think you can see a noticeable difference in Usman was not in a training camp, but he was clearly training and helping other guys. He wasn't coming off an injury. And you can see the difference in his sharpness and what it was able to do, and only think what more could have been done with the camp. With Volkanovski, like, Bisping said it very well kind of afterwards, which is, you just lost to this guy on a full camp. That's not the type of guy that you go in and think that you can beat on short notice. And in the end, this was not overly long. It was over in the first round. It's a perfect head kick. Absolutely perfect. And one that many people could argue has been vulnerable on Volkanovski throughout many of his UFC fights. Got dropped by Max with that head kick in that second fight. He's been almost caught by it a couple of times. He doesn't do a great job of getting both hands up to block kicks quite often. And he's somebody that likes to sort of slip, very boxing heavy, likes to move out the way, so he can kind of throw himself into those kicks as well. And obviously being smaller as well, his natural style is trying to obviously keep his head off the centre line. It's always going to be a danger. But Islam Makhachev was able to make that adjustment. He'd obviously seen that from the first fight. They didn't have a lot of time to prepare for Volk, but vis-a-vis what you said about thinking maybe Volk had seen something in the first fight that he'd been working on, what it really looks like is that Islam's camp had seen that in Volk and had that prepared just in case.
Yeah, and honestly, like, Islam looked better in the stand-up in the first fight, but just in this one round had, like, adapted so much more. Just shown so many more kind of more intelligent creases in his game. Why did he take this fucking fight? This potentially could have been a good fight on a full camp.
I don't blame Volk for having the self-belief, but this is also what kind of happens when a champion starts thinking they're indestructible. We kind of saw this with Adesanya when he did his whole, I'm moving up to light heavyweight, but I'm not going to physically change my body. I'm just going to do it and win the belt and go back down to show off. And then that disadvantage in pure weight ended up having such an effect once the grappling came into play in those in those championship rounds. Volk clearly has felt and has had every right to feel that he's invincible. And even with that first Islam loss, so many people said you won. So, you dropped him, you hurt him, you don't feel like you were outmatched. Then you go back down to featherweight and you put a clinic on against Yair Rodriguez. You have every right to think that you're invincible. But you've got to sometimes be a little realistic. It's like Volk's spoken out since and said that he just couldn't pull the trigger. He didn't feel like he had his sharpness. And this is the stuff that comes from sparring, from having those minutes, those rounds, that build-up, that trust in your cardio, that belief that you can put the pedal to the metal and put the gas on and go 5 rounds, that you're at peak, that everything's working at full capacity. If you're not in that state, particularly with Volk being a guy that weaponizes that cardio, you're in for a bit of trouble. And Makhachev had his fans behind him, everything to prove, is proven in this fight that he is a high-level fighter in all facets of the game and gets the knockout that he promised. It's a little heartbreaking, Josh.
Do you want to touch maybe on what we were talking about before we started recording?
About the short notice replacement for Makhachev. So the point, Josh and I were having a conversation before we started.
Because we're not shitting on him. Just something Matt was talking about that I actually think's quite sort of interested in the way that when you look at an MMA record, we've talked about this for the longest time. Like, people are fickle. Like, wins don't come with asterisks, so people just remember, like, you won or you lost. Was it a shit decision? Were there mitigating factors? People don't give a fuck.
4 of the biggest names that I'd say you could put on Makhachev's UFC win record have been guys stepping up on different variations of short notice. You think Arman Tsarukyan, who's a guy that we think is right on that level in terms of his ability to strike, grapple, put the pressure on.
Yeah.
He had to fight Makhachev on short notice and only just lost that fight. That was a really competitive fight earlier on in Makhachev's career. So let's move a little bit further forward. The 2 times he was booked and meant to fight Rafael Dos Anjos, which all of us thought, at lightweight, if Dos Anjos can make the weight, we've seen him controlled a little bit by those bigger framed guys at welterweight where he just can't quite manage. However, at lightweight, fully prepared, we wanted to see how Makhachev handled that test against a really well-rounded, experienced, tough guy who's big for the division as well.
Because even the Khabib fight, was kind of before he really hit stride.
He became champion after that loss. Yeah. And obviously Makhachev has those, while he has skills that are different from Khabib's, is not quite Khabib. Let's be real in terms of...
It's not just pick you fucking up and dump you like 10 times.
Or unrelenting pressure forwards. He's got a different style that RDA might have been able to do well against. Fellow Southpaw, could have been interesting. Instead, we got Dan Hooker on 3 weeks' notice, who gets ragdolled and finished in the first round. Bobby Green on what, like 10 days notice, 11 days notice, something like that.
Short, yeah.
Short, ragdolled, TKO'd in the first round, and then we get obviously this Volk rematch where he ragdolls him, not ragdolls him, but I kind of feel like clearly bested him throughout this contest. Like, I know Volk stopped the takedown, and I know that he was able to kind of turn him and press him against the cage.
A little bit. The size difference looked even more pronounced this time. Just
was also once Makhachev got
strength.
that plum clinch in, and you could see all of a sudden Volkanovski was struggling, and then, I mean, Makhachev's playing of range in this fight was perfect because he started with those body kicks, made Volk feel like he had to get inside. Then he went for the takedown just to make sure he knows that's a case. Then he won the clinch battle.
Well, yeah, when he had him there, like, as well, like, just very proactive with the knees. Volk was just constantly thinking about defending knees rather than throwing knees. Everything was just perfect.
And then obviously perfectly conditioned him to set up that head kick. And then once he did that, no space, suffocated him, was all over him. It's a real shame, man. And when you hear Volkanovski come out and say stuff like, I'm not okay when I don't have a fight, I'd had this hand surgery and I said yes because I wanted to get this rematch and thought I could win, but I needed that. I'm not okay as I am when I'm in training camp. Yeah, that's a bit worrying.
Yeah, I really wish he hadn't taken the fight.
It's just such a shame, man. And
Poirier said yes. Just...
there's guys that could have... Gamrot was a backup fighter for this.
Yeah.
What? Sorry, he's not sexy enough? Is he not going to sell enough tickets because you've already lost Costa? Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? And the stupidity... And do you know what this is? This is short-sighted. Because Volk's just been... Okay, you can say he didn't go out. But he got concussed. And then he had some bad follow-up shots where it looks like his head rolled back a couple of times. And are you telling me he's going to fight in January? I don't think so. I don't think he should. You can tell me that he might clear a medical suspension, but I don't want to see that fight straight away, not against a monster like Topuria. So now UFC 297 needs a new main event.
So potentially they do the interim. Potentially Max gets another shot at redemption.
Or they just push that fight back by a couple of months.
They might also do that.
Which I think would be the smarter move. But this is where...
No, they're not in the smart business, though. They're in the card-saving business. I mean, that's what we saw this weekend.
It's been so short-sighted, man. So short-sighted. And that's what just stands out. And I'm not saying it's easy, because you lost 3 fights in 2 days. And they were the main 3 of the, 4 main fights on your card. That's not easy to deal with. Huge amount of credit goes to the guys that stepped in to save the card. That's awesome. But when you hear that other guys put their name in the ring,
yeah,
I don't know what to say. And for Volk as well, this is the problem, is that you go from being this guy that, like, you've got a Hall of Fame record right now. Arguably the best featherweight of all time. Already. Great wins. Dominant champion. And now it's... Well, you're 1-2 this year. You're 0-2 at lightweight. And all of a sudden people... You know what I mean? And it's not that these things should be held against him.
That's the benefit, is you're 0-2 but at lightweight.
True.
So I think he's always going to be able to walk away from that.
But momentum is a thing, man. And what happens if you don't have that same air of invincibility in yourself when you go into what will inevitably be a world title level fight at featherweight?
Well, that's the sort of bittersweet reality of last weekend, that I hate it when it happens and when it's kind of contrived in a sense, but he has the built-in excuse. For him, I think it's going to be very, very easy to just kind of be like, look, I didn't really lose to him, I kind of lost to the circumstances, and as much as that is my fault, I'm probably not going to let that knock my faith in my abilities too much.
I respect that. I just think
But you're right. It is still like you're no longer on the win streak. It's kind of building from zero again.
We could have been talking about this rematch for UFC 300. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If Volk had beat Topuria, and Islam had beaten whoever stepped in. Trading long-term benefits for short-term pleasures is the folly of many a man. It doesn't apply to our co-main event, though. You know why?
Because Usman looked like the better fighter, and
Usman was ready.
I did think he got 2 and 3. I thought it was 28-28.
Don't get me wrong, in that first round, Hamzat's a monster, and that's hard to deal with. But after that, he just isn't the same guy. And it's not that he looks like he's just dead and he's just walking. No. But once that explosivity goes in the first round, he's just not the same guy. And what's interesting to me about this is that you can't use the cut to 170 as an excuse. And you can't really say, and this is what's crazy about this, you can't even say that he emptied the tank or completely overexerted himself in that first round. I'd say maybe holding the body triangle for 4 minutes is going to tie your legs out. But it's not like he was going crazy. And, if anything, I'd say he looked like he was trying to be reasonably measured. But it still exhausted him to the point where he didn't even go in for a takedown in that second round. And the takedowns he went for in the third round were desperate.
I think the other thing is Usman's hella strong. I think being in any kind of clinch or grappling exchange with Usman probably is still quite a lot. I mean, obviously he needs to shore up his cardio. I think he needs to kind of reconfigure his body to be a little bit more enduring and a little less explosive. Or maybe a lot more enduring.
Do you lose what he is though if you don't have that?
To some degree, obviously. But at the same time, you're not going to finish everyone in the first round, so it's almost like you're no longer controlling it. It's like betting big every hand for no fucking reason at all. Like inevitably you're going to lose.
I felt that fight was a draw, and I'll say 2 other things. You give Usman a full camp, and it's 3 rounds. I think Usman wins. You give Usman a camp and it's 5 rounds. I think Usman makes that look nasty in the championship rounds. And you give Usman a camp, you don't give Usman a camp, and that fight was 5 rounds on 11 days' notice. I still think Usman makes it look nasty in those championship rounds.
Or you just give Usman a fucking tune-up fight. The way he was talking afterwards, has had an effect on him.
3 losses in a row.
Yeah, so having had 2 losses, not had victory for that long, he said he didn't really trust himself. He needs to trust himself more. For fucking sure, if he has a tune-up fight, which doesn't really have to be that much further down, it's just not having to do first round against Chimaev on your middleweight debut. I think anything less than that, you could say was a much more fair kind of tune-up fight. Goes into that kind of contest.
He was so good, man. I mean, the only criticism you could really throw at him is just being. I'd say he needed a little bit more aggression in round 2, maybe, just when you noticed the tide was turning, and you'd say maybe just a bit too much of an acceptance of being on the ground. And again, you're on 11 days' notice. I took a lot of that first round as you don't want to gas yourself out completely, fighting off a position maybe you can't get out of.
And you know who you're going up against, so it's survive more than try to get that round back.
But I don't even know if that first round looks the same if you give Usman a full camp.
Oh, no, of course it doesn't.
And I'll tell you what as well, for a second in that first round, when he slammed forward, I thought Hamzat was out.
Yeah, it looked like he'd gone, he took that hard.
And the only thing that saved him, and I'll tell you what, there's one adjustment Usman could have made, and it would have changed it. Because if Usman had grabbed his arms before and then thrown himself forward, he sparks out Hamzat. But Hamzat had his right arm, and he was able to use that as a bracer for the impact.
Potentially kills him too, though, How far are you willing to go?
But isn't
So you wanna
Hamzat's
do a
whole
UFC
thing is...
fight.
But if Hamzat... Listen, this is the other thing, though. And here's one of the problems as well, I'd say, with Hamzat, is... If Hamzat was just a guy doing his fights, maybe talking a little bit, but you know what I mean, just going into these fights and fighting the competition and putting in these performances, I think I would be speaking really positively about him after this. But the reality is when you go around, I kill everybody, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, I fuck your boys, I fuck up your boys.
Just a shred of humility.
I fight 3
That's all you
people
want.
in one night, all this kind of shit. And then anytime you fought anybody with enough resistance to...
Get outside the first 3 minutes.
Yeah, it gets to a point where, you know what I mean, it negatively influences my viewpoints on you. Because I'm not saying, wow, you got past this hard test of Usman. I'm going like, man, you kind of got lucky that wasn't a draw, and you took this guy who's also a welterweight on short notice.
Yeah.
And really, I'll be honest, man, I think that's a good fight for Strickland. Strickland's way bigger than he used to be. He's always had decent grappling. He trains like a motherfucker. He's in your face. And one of the things that... Oh, what's his coach called? Usman's coach.
Usman's coach, Whitman.
Trevor Whitman said is you need to be moving forward, and that's what he clocked for round 3 is you need to be going forward, because if you're going forward, he can't be aggressive and bully you. And what does Strickland do? He's going to go forward and he's going to meet you. The only issue he's going to have is that first ring of the bell when Hamzat is going to dive across like a crazy person, and he's going to have to be willing to stand there and force that way or survive that initial...
Well, that's the thing I kind of want to see. Like, can Strickland sweep Chimaev? Because I know that, like, he has a good like ground game, and you know, he's kind of revered for like a few things, but I don't know how great he is like defensively. But I'm sure in terms of being able to get a sweep with an over aggressive guy, hunting submissions or hunting trying to take mount without having much respect for you, it'd be interesting. Very interesting.
Strickland's got to know, I just need to, even if he takes me down, I just need to survive 4 minutes. Fuck the 10-8 if I give up a 10-8. I'm going to have 5 rounds with this bitch. And he's going to be dead after round 2. And the less he respects me, the more likely it is that he's going to burn himself out in that first round. And there's nothing that we've seen that gives any impression that he has the ability to control that.
No. But we're going to get a chance to see it.
For Usman, I want him at middleweight. This is fun. I like Usman at middleweight. He was too boring and dominant at welterweight. It made me not like him, and then a Brit fought him and beat him, so he obviously became the nemesis. But I was cheering him on so hard. I've got so much respect for him after what he did, even in the loss. He's so good, man.
Yeah, he's great.
Let him fight at middleweight. Let him ragdoll. Like, it'll take some of these bitches down.
Yeah, it would have been a lot more fun if he'd had a fucking reasonable tune-up fight. And just gone on a fucking tear at 185. That would have been beautiful.
Or just sat out and maybe he could have still got the Strickland title shot just on the fact he beat him at welterweight before.
Knowing what we know now about where his mindset was at, I really, really, really wish we'd had a fucking tune-up fight for him. But not even someone that fucking sucks. Someone fucking exciting, someone sexy. Just not someone that's gonna take advantage of your slow fucking start in such an explosive way. Just not a dominant first 3 minute kind of guy.
Can I give you my hot take prediction?
Go on.
I don't think they give Hamzat the title shot next. I don't think they're going to look at that and think he was impressive enough, and I don't think it's building the kind of buzz that they thought a first round finish or dominant performance would. I think they're going to eventually go back to Drickus. Number 2 ranked in the world, well rounded. He's still going to have some fun trash talk. It gives them the ability to potentially prop up that DDP versus Izzy fight that they want to do so badly for the belt.
Well, Izzy said he's going to take some time out, right?
Yeah, but what's time out? Is that 6 months? Is that a year?
Well, it's also that kind of thing where you're like, take your foot off the gas, it's always going to be a bit of a problem. Take your foot off the gas after an well, yeah, I guess for him quite an embarrassing loss given the way he was setting everything up moving forward. Does he come back? Can he come back the same fire? Any amount of time is going to be a problem. But I think even a 6-month window is going to mean a much longer build up to get back to sharpness and stuff. So I think taking 6 months off is really like taking 2 years off.
He's also 35.
Oh yeah, as well, yeah.
He's getting on in time. Here's my issue though. I don't think he's taking time. I think there's a reason he's taking time off. I think he looks at it and thinks there's a lot of guys that he can beat that match up better against Strickland than he does. But there's something about Strickland that's just the worst matchup stylistically for Izzy.
Yeah.
Now, don't quote me on this, but what are the odds that he's just saying, I can deal with an aggressive wrestler because my takedown defense is good and I can deal with their striking. And I can deal with a pitter-patter technical guy. And I can deal with one of these good in all areas but not great at any one thing guy. I just can't beat this boxing style Philly shell motherfucker that's just going to be in my face the whole time and not winding up on anything enough to give me an opening to counter. Maybe that's it. Maybe he just wants someone else to beat Strickland and then I'm back.
What'll be interesting is he in the gym or not during this period?
He's still watching the fights because he still does his YouTube channel. And he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that gets out of shape. You know what I mean? But who knows? Maybe.
I apologise for squirming so much as well. I got a rib injury, and as a consequence of not being able to stretch out my back, I got old man back.
You have nothing to apologise for. You did not try and fight several different fans whilst watching UFC 294 live in Abu Dhabi. Unlike Paulo Costa. I bring this up because this pretty much happened around the time that Chimaev had just fought Usman. But Paulo Costa either got heckled or attacked some fans in Abu Dhabi. Obviously not fans of his, clearly fans of Hamzat. But what do you think about this?
He's a big, dumb motherfucker that does lots of stupid fucking shit. Nothing surprises me.
Would you be surprised to know where they've ranked Hamzat Chimaev today?
Yeah.
9th. This is why I don't think he gets the title shot.
Yeah.
I think they put him way higher up. Way higher up.
Because remember, we've talked about this before, the UFC have a very sizable influence on the collection of journalists that submit these rankings. So, fuck. Yeah, if he's only cockling at 9, that's not usually how they set up your title shot.
Very pro-Palestine. Said some lovely words after the interview that I thought were cool. And Makachev as well. And I think fairly balanced because I don't think ESPN were expecting to have quite that level of Free Palestine messages coming through their broadcast. But I like to see it. It's a complicated issue. I don't have sides. I'm just saying it's nice to see both sides being appreciated, particularly the poor million children that are definitely not part of Hamas that are suffering as a result. That's neither here nor there. Let's talk about other disappointing things happening in the world at the moment, such as no contests and doctors that get in the way of fights. I'm not saying that this is the reason, but should it maybe be considered that a doctor speaking English in an American accent in a busy stadium with people shouting in a language that isn't English, talking to an athlete who does not speak English as his first language, is not maybe the best communication chain to establish lucidity?
Also, not for nothing, but do you think if Walker had said Abu Dhabi, would he have been like, nope, UAE, dumb motherfucker, end the fight? What? How pedantic was he going to be that he wouldn't even try and rephrase or ask a different question after he says desert? I'm willing to believe that Johnny Walker does not always know what country he's in if he's travelling for a fight. I think he's got other shit on his mind.
Also, the round one as well. I'm really sorry, but multiple guys will not be 100% sure of what round it is.
Yeah.
Through the fight. That kind of happens if you don't get concussed. That can happen because you're in the middle of a fucking high adrenaline situation and your concept of time gets completely warped in those situations. You don't necessarily know if 5 seconds is passing by or 2 minutes. You're in the heat of whatever the situation is currently. So these are not the type of questions like, what's 1 plus 1? You should be establishing like basic brain function questions, not things like, which country are we in? Abu Dhabi. And here's an idea, like, you're talking to a Brazilian guy. If you want to establish lucidity, maybe don't expect the guy to have to translate everything in his head while listening to you and then answering. Maybe you should be able to have some basic understanding of, I don't know, get a translator in if you want to really, like, use communication and verbal responses as your basis of if you're going to clear the guy. And why wasn't he given the full 5 minutes? He should have been given more time.
Yep.
And then he's willing to fight. And this is the same doctor who on the prelims basically told a guy screaming in pain holding his balls, you weren't hitting the balls. Even though we all heard the sound of the kick landing on the cup. And we all universally recognise the pain that somebody is in when they get kicked in the balls. So much so that when people didn't get kicked in the balls, but went down acting like they got kicked in the balls, we can tell. Because it's not, they don't behave the way that people behave when they get kicked in the balls. It's fucking stupid. I was so looking forward to this fight. And let's be honest, let's look at this main card. Aliskerov versus Wally Alves was always going to be a one-sided bloodbath. Same with the Saeed Nurmagomedov fight. We knew when they put this card together that Saeed Nurmagomedov was there to show off, get a dominant finish, and kick ass as the opening fight on the main card. Aliskerov was meant to have a competitive fight against Imavov, but that went out the window. So instead you got a Wally Alves fighting at middleweight for the first time in fucking years. First time in the UFC, I think. Who hasn't had a fight since his last fight, which was a loss, where he didn't really look like he had it anymore. This was the fight. And obviously, nobody knew what the fuck was going to happen with Usman and Chimaev and all the rest. Like, we needed Ankalaev versus Johnny Walker. Perfect fight on paper. Stylish wild man versus boring counter striker that's good everywhere. No contest. Fight was more interesting after it stopped than it was beforehand.
It's it really fucking took the shine off what was already a pretty weird card, but it's fun in some ways. How fondly are you going to look back on this one?
I'm not going to look back on this card at all. This card was a dreadful disaster in my opinion. And the worst part is trying to watch this card with my girlfriend, who I'm like slowly trying to like get into UFC. But and she'll watch the fights, but obviously there's certain things that she doesn't quite like, and there's certain things she doesn't understand very well. So like the grappling is still a little confusing to her, and you still need good fights to kind of overwhelm the female, like her, like, are they getting hurt? Does it have to be so violent kind of thing? This does not goddamn help, man. This card. And it shipped Frank alive as well. Like, okay, he shouldn't have thrown the knee. But the knee wasn't that bad. He half blocked it.
Yeah, I mean, you assume the fight was going to carry on and you weren't going to overthink it too much. It was just going to be, anything else was probably going to be a point deduction from there. Although, we didn't get another point deduction. And usually I don't like it when the commentary team ham on with points. Sometimes they do get it right. And when they were shitting on the doctor, they had it right.
He had just had a bad night. It's never good. I do not like when non-fighters end up inserting themselves into the narratives.
Yeah. Like,
we shouldn't, when referees suddenly become the topic of conversation, when judges become the topic of conversation, and doctors. And it's like, listen, I get that you've got the Hippocratic Oath, and the doctor needs to take the viewpoint of, I've got to be 100% sure and I'm taking the fight of safety. But it's like, really, dude? Why are you working in a fight sport? event, if that's your viewpoint. Like, is that the case, or are you just trying to get your moment where you get to be the man and your name is in the newspaper because you took action? And then if anyone criticizes, you can come forward and say, well, I'm putting fighter safety first. It's like,
you shit the bed.
shit. Fucking shit. Let's talk about Aliskerov. What's there to talk about? Of course he's going to beat Wally Alves in fucking 2 weeks' notice. What are we talking about here? The guy's a monster. It's the reason they were booking him to fight Paulo Costa originally in his third fight in the UFC. Or second fight in the UFC. Whatever it is. They know the guy's a monster.
Yep. I hope Wally got paid. I doubt it.
I hope all of them got paid. I hope Usman got paid. I hope Volk got paid. I hope Johnny Walker. So he would have got paid. They just don't get their win bonus for a no contest.
Oh no! I obviously got paid. I'm hoping he got paid more. I'm hoping he got paid extra. I hope there was like, here's 50G just to you being you. Just buy yourself something you wouldn't normally buy, kind of deal.
Saeed Nurmagomedov looked really good.
I missed that one, unfortunately.
Mohamed Makayev looked really good.
Yep.
Really good. Tim Elliott's a tough guy to deal with. And it's an awkward style. And even when you think you've got him in good positions, he can roll and scramble out of it. And that's the first, Makayev. He's one of these guys that we know is really good, but he can also look like he struggles a lot to decisions in some of these fights that he's had. You think Charles Johnson, the last fight in London where he got his knee almost half bent out before he was able to turn it around. But he's got talent. Like, he can beat really top guys if he's on his day.
And again, the wins don't come with asterisks, as he's just got a lot of hype and a lot of reason to believe in himself right now. I think his performances don't necessarily reflect his current talent level, never mind his ceiling. But yeah, he has looked reasonably fallible a few times now.
It's something to consider.
Yeah.
A guy who looked pretty unfallible, Javid Basharat, was on his way to a win here. And let's be honest, I think Victor Henry, if you're given the time to actually have a bull shot acknowledged and recover from it, I think he goes through, and I think in the end Basharat probably wins the fight. But instead, some fucking doctor had to get involved and just be like, sir, you were not kicked in the testicles. This video footage is merely an optical illusion. What you are feeling, sir, is what we like to refer to as referred pain. You see...
You're having women's troubles.
Yes. You see, what quite often happens is, what you might be more used to is being hit in the balls and then feeling the pain in your stomach. What has happened with you, sir, is you've been hit in the stomach and you are simply feeling the pain in your balls.
Shitty fucking doctor.
Are you happy, though, if you're Victor Henry? Because, let's be honest, you probably go on to a loss in that fight and you still get kicked in the balls. You get away with it as a no contest, feeling like you've been screwed. But were you screwed? Or is that...
I don't think his mentality or like Josh Barnett, like in his corner, are going to let him kind of thing like that for a second. I think they're just going to
Not when Mike
lament what could have been in the time that got taken away, with the fight being cut short.
Especially when Mike Breeden was like 1 or 2 fights before you.
Look
at that guy! Look at that guy! He was getting his ass kicked. And he turned it around.
Julie I don't know what the fuck happened to him in the third round. When Breeden went psycho on him, he just shelled up. That was difficult to watch in some regards.
Is it weird that it wasn't until fight week and on Saturday that I realised that people from Abu Dhabi don't seem to like people from India very much?
Do they like anyone very much?
No, but it's weird that I thought he'd get cheered more and he got booed.
Huh. Yeah.
He got booed. The one Indian journalist at the press conference got unanimously booed. It was kind of weird. Mike Breeden was getting cheers long before his KO, and it's just like, how is this the side that... Well, I suppose, who knows? It's very weird. But that was a hell of a knockout, man. Good for him.
Great knockout.
Let's see the other fights. I've actually got to bring them up now on my head.
Oof.
Cedric Dumas getting the better of Abu Azaitar.
Yeah, old potato thief.
And Trevor Peak as well.
Yeah.
For a guy that's like, you think of as just like, literally they found a man having bar fights and put him in the UFC. He ground out this win, like really professionally. He used the wrestling a little bit. He was able to get on top. Didn't do anything stupid. Wasn't throwing standing hammer fists from boxing range. Or
Well, there was some slightly hammer fisty shots in there.
There were shots that had a hammer fist
kind of
essence to them.
Yeah.
But I thought, for a guy that's meant to just be there to show up and be entertaining, I thought, no, he showed up to win and he fought the fight he needed to win. That was a hell of a performance. Obviously, we had the no contest, Damas getting the better of Basharat, Mike Breeden's knockout.
Oh,
Nathaniel
that beautiful ginger beard.
Woods
Oh, yeah.
couldn't get it done against Naimov, but let's be honest, Naimov is a little big and a bit of a beast, and
Probably should have had a point taken away.
probably should have had a point taken away. And 2 years ago, these guys had 2 weight classes between them.
Yep. I just think that fence grab was a significant one. Should have lost the point before that. Just Woods gets done dirty in a close fight against a huge guy. But I still have faith in Wood at 45, and I hope they are reasonable with him. Don't hold this one against him. Remember, Jose Aldo got a title shot off a loss.
Yeah,
Let's be
but that's
fucking reasonable with Nathaniel.
You can't compare everyone to Jose Aldo, though.
I can demand a bit of love for Nathaniel.
I will give you that. Victoria Dudakova beats Jinyu Fry and apparently has blood exploding out of her ass. That's an image I don't really want to have in my mind, but I do.
Makes me think of Louis.
And Shara Magomedov beats Bruno Silva.
That was a good fight.
Yeah, you're good when you're getting Bruno Silva as your UFC debut.
Yeah, to be fair. What a beautiful ginger beard.
Yeah, guy's apparently a bit of a psycho though.
Oh, get out of town.
Yeah, he attacked some guy in Dagestan for holding hands with his girlfriend, and the guy actually out wrestled him, was able to like hold him down and knock him down, and so he walked away all bitter, waited for the guy outside, and then sucker punch KO'd him, and then started like stomping on his head on the ground. Jesus. And it's just some like normal dude, and he did it because it was an insult to him that he showed a public display of affection by holding hands with his girlfriend.
Still a nice beard though.
Bit of a psycho. It's funny, isn't it, that like you can have a card that we're so excited about, and then you get all these changes, and in many ways people were more excited about it after some of these changes than they were before. And really, in the end, it's like...
Well, it's something to discuss. I think that's where the excitement came from, you know. I think we would have liked to have seen the original villain.
Paulo Costa versus Chimaev would have proven way more about Chimaev at middleweight. Even if it turned out that he just took him down and choked him out in a minute, I feel we would have learned a lot more. Charles Oliveira seemed like he was ready for that rematch, and instead we got a guy that wasn't. The no contest, the Aliskerov domination, that, you know, if he does that to Imavov, we're having a completely different conversation.
Oh, yeah.
The Doctor, I mean, there's just so many weird... It's just the way, man, it's just a weird card.
Halloween, innit?
I know, but no card this weekend. But then, we're only 3 weeks away from UFC 295. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to jinx it, man. I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I'm going to talk about something that's not real. UFC 5 came out and I bought it. So excited, you know, because you get the new Madden. It's like, I'll play the new rosters. You get the new FIFA. Or EAFC, whatever they call it. I haven't bought that one.
EAFC 24.
EAFC 24. You get the new rosters. So you're like, UFC 5. 3 years they've been working on this game. Can't wait to see the new fighters. Oh wait, no. It's the same roster they had at the last version of the last game. Set with Yancy Medeiros and Tom Breese and all these guys. And Jose's still there. And A bunch of other retired people are still there. Do you know who's not there? Bryce Mitchell.
You told me some other ones that I remember you said Jonathan Martinez isn't in it.
No Jonathan Martinez, no Davy Grant, no Mohamed Makayev. Yeah. No, I mean, the flyweight's a mess. They've got like 11 people at flyweight, and one of them's DJ, one of them's Kajudo, and one of them is Jose Benavides.
So it just kind of like proves that like it's impossible to have an EA game that isn't at
Shit
least in
at
some
release.
regard like a dumpster fire.
Yeah. Now I do have the early access, so there's still the hope that they do a fighter update or a roster update at some point very soon.
Well, yeah, I suppose if they were kind of behind schedule on like doing the artwork for fighters and stuff, like why not just fucking dump some old shit on the roster? If it's easy enough to port it over, I guess it makes sense.
Positive stuff, they've made the uppercuts easier. The uppercuts used to have to hold two buttons at the same time, like X and square, and that was a pain in the ass. Now you just press the punch button with R1 instead of L1. And they've made some of the kind of like spinning attacks or heavier attacks a bit more organic. So you don't have to press like some weird combination of buttons, you just hold a button and longer. So for example, if you want to do a question mark kick, if your character has a question mark kick, rather than tapping L1 and circle for kick, you hold it and it starts off low and then kind of chambers up. So you can kind of, the attacks that are heavier, that require more setup, you've got to hold the buttons for longer. And they've also added damage, so you get cuts and bleeds, and these can affect visibility or movement, and the doctor can also stop the fight. So you can, for example, injure a player, get a cut over his right eye, and then just continuously target that right side to try and get a doctor stoppage. So stuff like that's pretty cool.
Nice. I don't know if I'm going to bother with it.
I would not recommend it.
I
I'm
also
just a crazy person.
Stopped updating. I stopped getting new FIFAs a while back.
Do you know what decision I made with FIFA?
To get the last Madden. Gone.
I'm ending it at FIFA for me. It's not FIFA anymore. I feel like that's the time that I need to stop playing FIFA. Because I haven't enjoyed it for a while. I prefer Football Manager anyway.
Same.
And actually, if they did a Football Manager for Madden or the NFL, I'd buy that instead, but they don't. So the only way I can vicariously pretend to be the GM of a American football franchise is through Madden 24. But it does get very frustrating.
Yeah.
At times. I'm playing the new one at the moment, and there's just certain things where it's like, you play a season and then you go to like the league stats and you're like, I wonder how all the other teams' quarterbacks are doing. And it's like, wow, isn't it crazy that all these different levels of quarterbacks all throw for a minimum of like 4,500 yards with like 40 touchdowns and like 11 interceptions?
Yeah, and the attributes just constantly improve. You get way too many guys in the 90s and just...
I don't like that there are 99 rated players in Madden. And it's become a whole thing of like who's in the 99 club. But it's like, I used to quite appreciate that FIFA had a rule of like, no players are 99. That's just stupid. No player can physically be a 99. That doesn't even make sense. Oh well. What have you got on for the rest of the week, seeing as there's no UFC?
I have some plans. How much of that? How much of my private life do I want to share on a podcast?
Are you doing anything nice next weekend?
I am. I don't know how much that I want to share on a podcast.
But you're going to be having fun.
Yeah.
We can leave it at that.
Weekend. You having fun this weekend?
I don't know, but I'm going to figure something out. I think I'm doing really girlfriendy stuff and relationshipy stuff with my girlfriend, which is actually really nice.
Nice.
And really enjoyable and warm. And I kind of owe her because I was ill last week and she stayed at my house and looked after me, even despite my flatmate having COVID, which I thought was pretty nice. And she watched...
How is Sly doing?
He's recovered now. He no longer has COVID. He is all good. But she watched all the fights. She watched 3 hours of the 7 o'clock kickoff games in the NFL, then stayed up with me to watch the Dolphins lose to the Eagles, which I thought was a pretty brave effort, and then also made it through an hour and a half of The Godfather.
I watched The Godfather yesterday.
You're kidding.
Well, I watched. We were talking about the show about the making of The Godfather.
Yes.
I got around to watching that. It's good. It's not great, but because it's about one of my favorite movies, everyone's favorite movie, really. I fucking loved watching it.
Yeah.
Even if most of it is bullshit, I didn't care.
It's a great movie.
It's a great movie.
It's a great movie. And we stopped after 3 because she was just getting too tired. And I was like, don't worry, we can catch this up later. And she's like, oh, no, don't you find it's going to be difficult to, like, remember everything that's going on? I'm like, might be for you. I can come into this movie at, like, any point in time. And I have, like, full understanding of, like, where the plot is and what I need to know. I can probably quote half of this movie. And I warned her of this at the beginning.
I knew when to turn the subtitles on and off. Because I was watching, I downloaded it. So I just had like either I had subtitles constantly or just during the Italian scenes.
Yeah.
And I just knew like my hand was going before like just before they started talking. I'm like, boom. And off again.
I had to prove before the movie started. I even said I can tell you like the opening like entire scene of this movie. She's like, no, you can't. I'm like, yes, I can. I believe in America. I made my fortune here in America. I have raised my children in the American way. I did like the whole opening bit and then put the movie on. And she was like, okay, you prove your point, but you've also just completely ruined this opening bit for me because I heard you say it first before like the actors who are good at it.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, that's a fair point. I'm going to shut up. So yeah, doing that stuff and then watching some sport, man. Arsenal play. I think we're playing someone.
Yeah, I don't even want to talk about Bournemouth right now. I know I'm wearing the Bournemouth kit. Yeah, away kit this year, but.
Are you starting to feel not so good about the fact that you haven't had your first win yet?
I don't feel as bad as I did after the Everton game because this one was just like again just pure fucking stupidity. But you know, it's no way. It was supposed to be a lot better this year. That's 2 games we should have won that we didn't even get a point. I don't want to talk about it, man.
That's for another show. That's everything from us. We're going to leave you to it, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week to give a preview for the Almeida versus Derek Lewis card. Until then, look after yourselves. Peace out. Didn't know what I was going to say there, but I went with peace out.
Bonsoir. It's French.
Like, subscribe, all that bullshit. Write comments.